What's up YouTube, Brian from Slow Your Roll here, and today I want to talk about Starlink. Now there's a lot of videos out there, folks that are full-time RVers are using it, some to better experiences than others. I want to break that down for just the weekend warriors. That's what my wife and I are. We typically only go out on the weekends, maybe 5 days, 6 days at a time. We wanted to know, is it worth it to order Starlink for the house and then to bring it on the road now that roaming and the RV features have debuted? As of the time I press record on this GoPro, we're getting 119 megabytes down, 7 megs up. Okay, so 7 megs up, not great, but a lot better than we have been getting. Since we've been on this trip, we've been living in the RV for about 13 days now. That's been from Oklahoma to Kansas, southern Minnesota, right on the border of Iowa. And then now we are up in two harbors. Behind me, you can see, in the foreground there, you can see Dishy. You can probably see Laura reading over there. And then right behind us is a beautiful view of Lake Superior. There'll be a separate video on our trip where I'll tell you all about the campground here and how awesome it is. But let's get back to what we're here to talk about, and that is Starlink for part-time RVers. Okay, what turned me on to Starlink? First thing was, I just thought it was a novel concept. I'm big into technology, and anything that drives other companies to be better is good. And I think that's what Starlink is essentially going to do once they fix their process. It's not perfect yet, but they're getting there. What we've had for the past, since the dawn of the internet and AOL and things like that, we've kind of had these conglomerate internet service providers like Comcast and Fidelity, Cox, and they advertise these huge 1 gig packages, usually around $100 a month, and you don't ever get anywhere near that speed. That is what turned me on to Starlink. Once I heard it was coming out, I immediately put myself on the wait list. That was back in February of 2021. Fast forward 14 months, and we're living in Lawton, Oklahoma. If you looked at the availability map, and you're not familiar with Lawton, Oklahoma, you've got Fort Sill, where I was stationed, and we lived a half a mile south of that. So there was a weird juxtaposition of where the service was available and where our physical property was. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to get service. We pulled the trigger, we ordered the dish, it came to our house, set it up, and like I said, we set up the service address about 200 yards north of our position. Our backyard faces north, which is the natural orientation of the satellite, and we had great service. I mean, it was 100 megs, and we also had our existing Fidelity account. So if you're unfamiliar with Starlink, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty details. There's a ton of videos on YouTube that are far better than this one at explaining the technical aspects of how it works and all that stuff. What I want to just talk about, so we'll start with the account options. You've got 3 choices to make when you log in and request service through Starlink. You can request a business account, a residential account, and now you can request an RV account. Let's back up a little bit into the residential account. You also have a feature called roaming, and I'll kind of get into that in a little bit more detail further on. The residential account is a physical address, a hard address. It's a house, an apartment, something you're not going to move from. The residential address encompasses the physical latitude and longitude of your address as it pertains to Starlink's availability. So you can't move from that location, or else you risk losing your place in line. Roaming, they came out with, I think, about May 2022. And what that does is that allows folks with a residential address to be able to move the dish temporarily to another address without losing that original place in line. So when they return to their residential address, they can still connect to the service. However, roaming is at a significant throttle. You're not going to get nearly as good a service, and you're going to basically be put to the end of the line as to what is remaining in that new area that you move to. The RV feature is great for those who are constantly going to be on the move and rarely return to the previous location they just came from. However, you're at the mercy of whatever network you relocate to, and you'll get whatever's left over, essentially, is how I understand it. We've been on the RV feature for 2 weeks now, and it has been exponentially better than when we had residential plus roaming. So let's kind of dive into that. When we had residential, no roaming, we were getting around 100 megs download and probably 5 to 10 upload. It was great. We thought that was fantastic. Once the roaming feature came available, we clicked on it and immediately saw a significant drop in our service. We were getting 3 down, 1 to 2 upload. What I think happened is, since the address that we had claimed on Fort Sill, which was highlighted on the map as available, even though we were so close, basically took me out of the queue for that residential and relegated me to the roaming as available. That's my assumption. I contacted the help desk via email and got no response. Fast forward 3 weeks, we have packed up the house in Lawton, Oklahoma. We're on our way up to Minnesota, and we stop in a state RV camping park, where I get a email from Starlink. And it's a real-time, chat, and they're talking to me. So essentially, they had me perform a factory reset, which is just cycling the power on, power off, power on, power off, in 2-second intervals, and then that resets everything that you've set up. So it'll delete your SSID, it'll delete your password, and then you just have to reset that stuff up. On Starlink's end, I don't know what they physically did, but once I did that factory reset and reset it up, and then added the RV feature, the speeds went up to like 20, 30, which I thought was great compared to the 3 or 4. And since that time, we have moved to northern Minnesota, the North Shore, and speeds have just gotten better up here. As you saw at the beginning of the video, I'm getting like 100 megs right now. That's the fastest I've ever seen. The way we've got the Starlink set up in the base camp is you've got a 120 volt outlet towards the rear near the hatch, and that's on a power strip to protect that from any surges or anything like that, but it also extends the distance that we can place the router. We then take the cord. I think this is a 75-foot cord, whatever comes with the satellite dish. A significant amount of excess, but what we found works best is if we run that cord so you're going to use the satellite end. It's a straighter piece, which allows it to go through the existing tubing and exit the base camp. If you use the other end that plugs into the router, it's like a 90-degree angle, and it's very tough to kind of manipulate that into tight spots. So we found that the hole through the battery compartment works great, so we run it right through that. And then down in between the batteries, see if you can see that. And if you can see that light down there, so that used to go to a battery vent. Again, if you have lead acid batteries, you need that to be there to vent the gases in this compartment. However, with the lead acid or the lithium batteries, we don't need that. So I took that vent off, and then I'm going to be looking for a longer term solution to make sure that it's still covered up and nothing's coming through there. But as we walk around the base camp, so there's the vent. It used to have just a white piece over it, and then we just take the cord out from there, and then basically I slowly take that down until I have enough slack to reach the dish. And again, that's going to be dependent on whatever situation you're in. You're going to need to find wherever faces north and kind of orient the dish that way. That's the way it's naturally going to set up. And this just plugs into the base of the satellite. Click it in there. Then we'll go back in the base camp and turn on the power by plugging in the router. And you look for that little light. This is a Gen 2, so look for that little LED light down there. And then we're just going to wait for it to power up. This could take anywhere from 5 to hell, it's taken an hour to orient sometimes. So again, just go about setting up camp and wait for that. All right, so when you see the dish, when it's first set up, when it comes out of stow mode, it's going to go completely horizontal. That's when it's in its searching mode. Like I said, that could take anywhere from a couple minutes to an hour, just depending on how good your service, depending on how good your signal is. You're going to know when it's found something or if it's still trying to connect when it's in this configuration here. So kind of halfway between vertical and horizontal. And you will see it moving around quite a bit. So let's see if we can check my phone. All right, so you'll see that it's online. And let's just do a speed test, see what we're getting. 22, so that's actually pretty good. That's 29.30 is the best I've gotten so far since it's been in RV mode. 35, wow. That's really good. So that's actually 10 to 15 megabytes per second higher than what we're getting just over there. So there's a campground over there. We moved spots and we were averaging about 22, 25 megabytes per second. So that's actually cooking. I know the expectation is to get like 100, but I will take 35 every day. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So again, as long as you've got an uninterrupted view of the sky, again, even leaves, trees, pines, things like that, if they're in the way, you're not going to get a good signal. It's just going to say it's either searching or it can't find a signal. But as you can see here, it's nice and wide open, no obstructions. And we got internet. As far as cost, so the prices have just recently increased. I can't remember how long ago it was, but it was a few months, because when we first got it, I think it was $100 a month, and now it's up to, well, we pay for RV, so now it's up to $135. But anyway, you're gonna have to pay $600 just for the hardware. And then once you get the hardware, so if you're residential, you may have to wait a while, depending on where you are on the wait list. If you're RV, you get it right away. Residential, I think right now on the website, it's $110 per month. The RV is $135 a month. But the thing with the RV is you can pause and unpause that feature. So a benefit to weekend warriors is if you're not going to be using it during the winter, for instance, maybe you store your trailer, you can pause your service and shut it down. It won't shut it down instantaneously. You're going to pay for that month, but once that month is done, it'll stop it for the subsequent month. Let's talk reliability. So when we first got it and we had it in that just residential mode only, we were getting great service. We were getting about, I would say 90 to 100 megs. Again, so that wasn't a true test because we did have the fidelity running as well. But again, at the house, you're talking, we had a Nest thermostat, we had a Peloton, we had 2 TVs plugged into it, our Apple TV, 2 cell phones, 2 iPads, 2 laptops. So again, I don't expect that amount of draw while I'm on the road. I want it to have internet access so we can stream video, so I can upload videos to YouTube. That's it. I don't have to provide internet to any of those other things. Once we switched to roaming, the service went down considerably. So again, we were getting like 3 to 5 megs. This was just about the time we were packing up the house. So we really, again, we didn't have all those things drawing from the same internet. We had the RV feature. We're getting about 25, 30 megs, and then we actually just got back from a state forest, and in that remote location we were getting like 50. So residential great, roaming crap, RV has been good so far. Customer service, terrible. Starlink has not figured that out yet. I have yet to find a way to speak to an actual person. If you have found a number, please post that in the comments so other people you can help out other people. Otherwise, it's just a series of cues. It kind of brings you through a self-help type of diagnostic, and then basically if you can't fix it, you click the thumbs down button and that'll generate a message to a help desk, which they may get back to you right away. In my case, it was 3 weeks later. So again, not a big deal. We weren't using the internet, we were just kind of traveling. But once that person did contact me and kind of ran me through the processes, again, I don't know what fixes they did on their end. It just started working. Is it worth it for weekend warriors? It depends. From a portability standpoint, from a setup standpoint, absolutely. You've got the dish, you've got the modem, and then you've got the cabling. If you can buy a box, a tough box, I mean, I use a Pelican case that's padded. Everything fits in there. We don't have to worry about it getting damaged because the cable is fragile. You don't want to be stepping on the cable or pinching it or anything like that. But that's the biggest thing. As long as you can protect it, you can bring the thing anywhere. And it comes down to how often do you travel? Are you going out every weekend? Are you going out maybe one weekend a month? Are you doing just a big 2-week trip during the year? It's going to kind of dictate what plan you go for and whether it's worth it for you. If you're going out infrequently, I would say the cost far outweighs the benefit. Probably don't need the RV feature, but you would want the roaming feature. If you're going out weekly, yeah, I think it's definitely worth it. Especially if you have, say you have a network or an internet provider at the house, one of the big companies, Cox, Comcast, Fidelity, and you just want to buy the Starlink for your RV. So again, you're talking $600 for the hardware, and then $135 a month for the months you use it. Now, you might say, hey, I'm paying $100 for my service provider at home. This is another $100, so that's $200 a month plus the $600 for the router. If you think about it, if internet is something that you need on the road, you're probably paying for MiFi, whether it's AT&T, Verizon, or some other company. If you've bought a WeBoost or anything like that, those are $300-400 as well. It kind of washes out, in my opinion. And when we were actually doing that for a while, we still had our Fidelity going on at the house. We supplemented that with the Starlink internet while we were home. And then we would take the Starlink on the road with us. It's been 2 weeks since we moved into the apartment. And for shits and gigs, I decided to set up the Starlink in Minneapolis. Now, I'm going to cut to the availability map that shows no coverage for Starlink in Minneapolis. However, we did set up Dishy on our balcony here. For orientation purposes, that's north. You can see the Minneapolis skyline there in the distance. We are still getting about 40 up and 10 down. So quite a surprise. Now that we're in the city, we do have fiber at the apartment we moved into, so we're gonna actually decommission Dishy for the year that I'm gone. So we'll just pack that up and we'll free up another spot for another user. But I did think that was an interesting turn of events that we actually can pull a decent amount of bandwidth in an area that supposedly has no coverage. So again, to recap, just shooting a video on whether this is worth it for weekend warriors all depends on your budget and your needs. For me, it was totally worth it. I was more than willing to shell out the additional money for it so that we had internet on the road. It may be cost prohibitive for you. You just gotta kind of run the numbers. That's it for now. Thank you for watching. Again, please like, subscribe, do all the things, and we will catch you next time. Take care.